It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we talk your property news 7 days a week for a brand new year. In 2025, of course, you can hear us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. Well, I say a brand new year, but you know, it is Tuesday, January the 21st, so we're rocking through it. Here's a question. How many of us were searching online properties over the Christmas New Year break? Well, plenty of us by the data numbers. And over the last 12 months, Sydney's suburbs got the lion's share. So what came out on top as the most searched areas in Sydney? Well, Castle Hill was the winner according to PropTrack. It was the most searched location in 2024, driven by improved metro access. You see, we talk about that, don't we? The investors, they know to follow the new train tracks for development and growth. What else was popular in Sydney? Well, the Hills Shire, including Kellyville and Balcombe Hills, also ranked alongside Castle Hill. Mossman, that ranked second, of course, offering luxury waterfronts and proximity to the city lifestyle. I think not all of us can afford to live in Mossman. We get online and sort of daydream about where we would live if we won lotto. And, of course, not everybody can stay in Sydney and buy in Sydney. Last year, we talked extensively about the migration out of Sydney's property market by home buyers moving to other states, and also spent some time talking about where is the value for your mortgage borrowing. And just yesterday we were talking about how affordable Darwin is. But not all people want to move out and that far away from New South Wales. The Blue Mountains. Now, we featured a couple of times last year the Blue Mountains as being this viable destination for people to move to and at the same time remain in the state. And people are moving there in their numbers. We also spoke to Paul ORiordan, the principal from ORiordan Real Estate, and he is back on the Real Estate Breakfast for 2025. Good morning to you, Paul. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast. How was your Christmas, New Year break?
Thank you very much, Craig. Happy New Year to you. Look, it was mixed. It was very relaxing. I ended up doing myself a little bit of an injury playing with the kids in the backyard and the dog, and fell in a hole that the dog had dug that I knew was there, coincidentally. But anyway, I found it again. Back on the mend now and mobile, but yeah, a little bit of a sit out for a few days.
Oh, no. Yeah, you got to watch the dogs. They've got so much activity in them. Apart from the dog, I mentioned that not everybody wants to move out of New South Wales. Some people today might be hearing for the very first time this option of the Blue Mountains and don't know what your local market has been doing. So perhaps first off, Paul, give us a little bit of a recap on how the Blue Mountains market performed in the last 12 months to bring people up to speed.
Yeah, look, we had a bit of an interesting year last year. It started extremely well. A lot of buyer movement and a lot of buyer confidence, actually, for the first couple of months leading up to about July. This is kind of off the back of interest rate cut talk, and I'm sure that kind of affected most of New South Wales and probably the greater Australian market. So we were very much the same. Then obviously the narrative took a bit of a turn and then it started to slow. So that impacted a bit of the confidence in buyers, and buyer numbers, I guess, across the board were dropping a little. But the Blue Mountains market, it's often referred to as, okay, the Blue Mountains, but it isn't. It's a very big area. So it's really broken up into 3 different parts. You've got the lower mountains, the mid-mountains and the upper. And the buyers looking in each of those markets don't often transcend into the others. There's particular things they're looking for. The lower markets, look, the strongest market we have up here, the lower mountains. So that's your suburbs like Glenbrook, Blaxland, Springwood. They saw growth in the quarter, the back half of the year compared to 2023, which is very, very good, 13.4%. So it's still moving on that end. But the other suburbs, 2023 was a bit of a correction for us all. 2024 has been, the July to December has been a lot more positive. So we're very happy about that.
Yeah, and when you look at the different cities and suburbs across Australia, one thing that really does stand out is just how different suburbs perform. Different cities operate, we know, at different speeds, and so do the suburbs. It's what makes the real estate market so diverse, which is constantly evolving, let's face it, and being stimulated by a number of factors. So in the Blue Mountains, what have been some of the strongest performing suburbs that you're taking note of?
Yeah, look, Glenbrook is generally at the top of the list. Now, that is the first village as you're coming up into the mountains. So it didn't have a correction. So the median house price in 2022, and I'm just looking at the time of July to December, those two quarters, the back half of the year, because that's the most current. So 2022, it was 1.3 million. In the 2023 same period, it was a little over 1.4. And just last year, it's gone up to 1.62. So very, very strong there. A super desirable suburb, and always at the top of the search list when you look at the portals. Generally, Glenbrook, Blaxland, Leura at the top, but they're the main search suburbs.
Okay, we are talking to Paul ORiordan in the Blue Mountains this morning. We'll come back. We'll talk more about this destination that a lot of people are moving into out of Sydney. We'll do that next.
Every morning from 6 a.m, we bring you the latest real estate news with diverse perspectives from leading industry experts. We deliver the most property podcasts across Australia every week.
And right now, let's go to Queensland and catch up with somebody we were talking to a few weeks ago. Jackie McKeering is there, and she's in this spot of Sandgate. She's got a little bit of a property tip for us this morning. And good morning to you, Jackie. What have you got for us?
Well, today my number one tip is for buyers. I would not be waiting for any external factors like discounts, whether it's a rate drop or government incentives to buy first homes. I feel like they just inflate the market, that promise those first home buyers grants and in effect push those house prices up for them.
Remember, we are not a real estate company. We are 100% all about increasing your awareness and knowledge for buying and selling properties.
And it is a Real Estate Tuesday. We're talking to Paul from the Blue Mountains, who is giving us a bit of a lay of the land. And since we started off talking about Sydney being too expensive, Paul, for the first-time buyers and perhaps also downsizers and upsizers, currently the Sydney median house price is at 1.65 million. Some experts are predicting that the Sydney median house price could reach $2 million within 3 years. So let's look at the top suggested suburbs for buyers looking at getting into the Blue Mountains that can inform them a little bit further about a possible destination move this year.
Yeah, look, I think the pick of the suburbs for me, for kind of entry level, the lower mountains is a very competitive market, and those prices are kind of getting on towards the Sydney median. A little bit more affordable the further you come up the hill. The mid-mountains, look, median house prices are anywhere between $815 to about $850, $855. Leura is another flagship suburb, but the suburbs around that, Katoomba, you can still get in. There's properties on the market at the moment from $750, similar with the mid-mountains, so a lot more affordable. Great for the first home buyers that have the free stamp duty up to $800 and concessions up to $1 million. So a really good little position to get started and have the beautiful Blue Mountains lifestyle as well.
Yeah, and what about the holiday homes? Because you've got them there in your area. How much activity have you sort of got at this time of the year in terms of transacting on those?
Yeah, look, there's a huge amount of holiday lets. So the further up the hill you go, Wentworth Falls, Leura, Katoomba, Blackheath, there is a high concentration of places where you can come and stay. Generally, the stronger months for vacancy being full is winter first, spring second, autumn third. Summer, depending on the climate, if it's really, really hot, everybody goes towards the sea. If it isn't so hot, we see a pretty good rise up here with tourists in the Blue Mountains as well. And the weather's been pretty mild this year. So, yeah, we're seeing good numbers coming through there.
Now, we're in 2025 proper. Of course, a big talking point is going to be these interest rates. I'm picking that an area like yours really does make the difference when it increases that borrowing capacity for people to move out of Sydney. Suddenly they can borrow more. So you'd be really hanging out for the first one to drop in terms of movement on the interest rate.
Yeah, I think, look, if we get a drop this year, and depending on who you talk to, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So I won't get into the when because that's a bit of a lottery when they make that decision. But I think it's going to signal a lot more buyer confidence when it'll be the worst is over. It can only get better from here, which was what was happening at the first half of the year. People think, okay, well, the worst is over. We're getting an interest rate very cut soon. But it didn't happen. So it's kind of prolonged that. It'll signal to the market things are going to be easier from here, and I think we'll see an uptick. A lot of the suburbs in the lower, mid and upper mountains have had corrections last year. One or two of them are still correcting from the 2 years ago, 2023. Some were still correcting last year. So I think almost the bottom is in. If we see an interest rate drop, I think we'll be off to the races again. Sydney siders will be making the decision, look, let's do something in the mountains. And look, 60 to 80% of the buyers we're seeing up here are from the Sydney metro area.
Yes, off to the races. That's what everybody wants to do. That is for sure with the interest rates. All right then, Paul. Well, enjoy your Tuesday. Enjoy the Blue Mountains. Look forward to chatting in a few weeks' time.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to talking to it again.
Listen to in-depth discussions with industry leaders on investing options, understanding different suburbs with insider perspectives and exclusive tips.
When you say that, a lot of people will sort of go, what? What are you talking about, self-insuring? You've got a large portfolio. This is something that you've been thinking about, self-insuring right across that portfolio of properties.
And this isn't something that I recommend for everyone. And if you have a single property, this may not be the best way to go. But when I think about all of the properties that I have, and I think about the insurance premiums that I'm now paying, then I'm probably looking at around $60,000 to $80,000 a year in insurance premiums. But I'm thinking about the fact that, at $80,000 a year, after 3 or 4 years, I've probably already got enough money in that fund to rebuild one of the houses anyway.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.